in the Netherlands. I would like to welcome everyone that's joining this session about cross-movement collaboration, and a special welcome to the two panelists from India and Brazil that we will talk to later. Before we start, we would like to explain that this session has translation in English, French, Spanish, and we were supposed to have Portuguese, but that didn't happen. So it's those three languages. And make sure you click on the bottom right corner. There's a little globe, and you can click on that and find the language you prefer. And also next to the translation button, if it's all right, there's a live transcription button. You can also press if you would like text explanation of what's being said, written explanation. Also to let you know that this session will be recorded. So if there's anything you don't want to be public, please make sure you don't mention that in this session. The other thing that's important, please make sure that you mute yourself so that we don't have background noises. And we would very much appreciate the people who are joining the session to put your name, organization, and if relevant, relevant, your organization and country in the chat. So we have a bit of an idea who's joining. This session is organized by GAGGA. GAGGA is the Global Alliance for Green and Gender Action, which is an alliance between Fondo Centroamericano de Mujeres, Central American Women's Fund, Marrakesh and Both Ends. Marrakesh is an international women's fund as well, based in the Netherlands, and Both Ends is an international environmental justice organization. The GAGGA program was set up as each of the alliance member experienced that there's a lot of overlap in the issues that we work on. And we encounter the same challenges, but we work quite separate. For example, it's often women who are at the forefront to take action when there's environmental degradation as a result of extractives, dams, floods, droughts, or forest fires. But they're not the ones who take part in the decision-making processes. And there's a lot of money for environmental issues, but there hardly goes to women-led initiatives. And with women, we mean women in all their diversity. So the GAGGA program started in 2015, and the aim was to learn from each other and to jointly strengthen the voices of women in the communities worldwide who fight environmental degradation, climate change, and who work on proposals and solutions. So it's not only fighting against, but it's also really hearing what the solutions are from women in the communities. GAGGA as a program provides financial support, but equally important, we provide technical support and we facilitate linking and learning. Over the past 5 years, we built a network of around 20 women's rights and environmental justice funds. And the funds are important for us because they really know what's going on in their countries. They know the context and they know how to reach these women-led initiatives. Over 40 NGOs, and these NGOs provide technical support to the initiatives in the communities, the women-led initiatives, but they also do lobby and advocacy on a national and international level. And the network consists of over 400 community-based organizations. We also entered into a strategic alliance with 350.org, who's organizing this event, with WEDO, the Women Environment and Development Organization, and with Global Green Grants and Prospera, as they're very experienced in influencing donor, because part of this program is also to influence donor to provide better quality money for women-led initiatives. So GAGGA is also a lobby and advocacy program. And in the next 5 years, the network will contribute to continue to strengthen women-led initiatives and actions to influence governments, investors, and donors to divest from fossil fuels, defend critical ecosystems, and support gender-just climate solutions. So it's not only against, it's also to really get the gender-just climate solutions to be strengthened and to be supported. We're convinced that in the current crisis, And it's not only the pandemic, it's not only the climate crisis, but it's a lot of crises. It's crucial to strengthen collaboration across movements. And in GAGGA, we strengthened the collaboration between women's rights and environmental justice. And in the next 5 years, we very much want to align and strengthen and join forces with the climate movement, which overlaps, of course, with the environmental movement, with the aim to become stronger collectively, more diverse, inclusive, and powerful. In the past 5 years of GAGGA, there were a lot of experiences of this cross collaboration, cross-movement collaboration, and we would like to present two of them. Bringing together women's rights, environmental and climate justice organizations and local groups. One is in a fight against unsustainable water governance from Latin America, and the other one is women and extractives in Asia. So we will have a panel discussion with two speakers from GAGGA. And after that, we would like to discuss how to further strengthen such cross-movement collaboration to inspire, to share, and to continue to learn from each other. And also hopefully to hear from you what your experiences are. So I would very much like to welcome Bhanumathi Kalluri, who's the director of DATRI, a resource center for women and children in India, and to Vanessa Perper, the program manager of CASA Social Environmental Fund in Brazil. And even though they have their fund in Brazil, they work in all of South America. So maybe Banu, I don't see Banu on the screen, but I'm sure she hears me. Could you tell us a bit on how this cross-movement work came about and why it was so important? And also why you took on like a regional approach, because it's not only in India, but it's really a regional initiative.
Thank you, Tamara. I am representing an organization called DATRI in India and also a regional network in Asia. We are called WAMA, Women in Action on Mining in Asia. We are a platform for representing voices and demands of indigenous women, rural women, women affected by mining, either as communities placed and threatened to lose their livelihoods, or as women working in the informal sector as mine workers, mine labor. So what we were doing was fighting our own struggles locally, trying to protect land rights of indigenous communities where big mining companies were coming and taking away the land and forests and natural resources. But what we found was that the issues were very common, whether it was campaigns in India or in the Philippines or Mongolia or Cambodia. So, but also the risks were common and getting quite serious. The same mining companies operating in the region, the same investors and financial institutions influencing the state policies and our governments were all acting in collusion to bring greater pressure on communities to give up their lands. Women fighting against this have been facing a lot of threats, physical threats, emotional threats. So we felt that as small campaigns, especially where our local governments and national governments are becoming more and more repressive, we find the need for larger platforms at a regional level and global level. And that was the reason why we mainly came together and formed this alliance so that we could take strength from each other, we could learn from each other. The WAMA network basically provides capacity building, mainly also because a lot of campaigns don't have women in the leadership positions. It is mostly male dominated even within the campaigns. And this also results in women's demands not being articulated adequately. So we felt that grassroots women who are risking their lives and joining the campaigns and rallies are actually not getting the benefits from these campaigns, or their demands are not being directly part of the campaign demands. So we felt that women should have access to more information, should be able to understand the the implications before mining or other companies, industries come and encroach their lands, because most of the time they're fed with false information. So their right to taking decisions is clouded by the lack of proper information. So as a network, we have been trying to reach out to women in order to facilitate learnings and cross learning, so that there is strength and solidarity in this collective bargaining that we are doing at the regional level.
Thanks a lot, Banu. And going from Asia to Latin America, and it's actually the same question for you, Vanessa. So how does this cross-movement work come about? Why is it important? And why did you take a regional approach?
Hola a todos, todas y todes, buenos días. Un gusto enorme estar con ustedes acá para presentar la campaña Las Mujeres Somos Agua de GAGGA. Bueno, como dijo Tamara en su presentación, la Alianza GAGGA es un conjunto de organizaciones enorme, ¿no? Somos fondos, somos ONG, somos grupos de base comunitaria que estamos trabajando en justamente la mirada de la intersección de los movimientos de justicia ambiental, justicia climática y los derechos de las mujeres. Y nosotros, grupos de GAGGA de Latinoamérica, nos vino una idea de llevar adelante las historias de las mujeres que están a frente de estas luchas. El agua es un tema muy importante, sabemos todos de esto, y sabemos también cómo afecta a la vida de las mujeres, especialmente de las mujeres defensoras del ambiente, no tener derecho al agua limpio, sano, seguro, ¿no? Hay un montón de cuestiones que están involucradas con el tema de agua. Y también sabemos que hay muchas mujeres que están actuando al diario para transformar esta situación, ¿no? Como pueden ver, la campaña es algo muy visual. Estamos con algunas imágenes. Empezamos en 2017. Uno de los temas principales de esta construcción colectiva que hicimos es mostrar las historias de las mujeres. Es a partir de una escucha de la rutina de la vida de estas mujeres defensoras del agua y cómo las afectaciones les pasan, que pensamos en colectivamente mostrar, incidir en algunos públicos específicos. Estamos con la campaña desde 2017. Para cada una de las campañas elegimos el mes de marzo, porque es un mes muy importante para las mujeres. Hay dos fechas importantes en marzo, el 8, el 22, que es el Día Mundial de Agua. A través de algunas acciones puntuales en conjunto, elegimos hacer campañas digitales y otras acciones también, como webinarios, charlas. Hay una construcción muy interesante, porque cuando las mujeres comparten sus historias, sus vivencias, cuando las escuchamos, hay mucho intercambio. El intercambio de experiencias trae a todos nosotros, actores de GAGGA o no, a los públicos que queremos atingir un fortalecimiento, ¿no? Compartimos informaciones, a partir de tener estas informaciones tenemos más condiciones de ir adelante, actuar para cambiar este escenario terrible que es la ausencia de voz cuando se piensa en toma de decisiones relacionadas a políticas públicas, por ejemplo, ¿no? GAGGA tiene como fuerza motriz grande justamente tener a frente la voz y la vez de las mujeres. ¿Qué está pasando en sus territorios? ¿Cómo las afectaciones de minería, de deforestación, de grandes proyectos de infraestructura están afectando sus vidas? ¿No? Hay mucha contaminación, sabemos que las cosas pasan en territorio primero, ¿no? La gente de la ciudad también sufre con las afectaciones ambientales, pero en algunos espacios eso es un poco peor. Y la idea de esta campaña es justamente poner a las mujeres a frente a partir de sus vivencias, de sus historias, de sus experiencias. Tamara.
Thanks, Vanessa. Gracias. So you told a bit about how this cross-movement work came about, and can I maybe start with Vanessa this time, so to switch a bit. Can you tell us a bit what do these cross-movement initiatives or campaigns at the international or regional level entail, and also a bit what kind of impact does it have beyond the campaign itself?
Cierto. Bueno, nosotros empezamos con la campaña Las Mujeres Somos Agua a nivel regional, ¿no? Nos juntamos los fondos, las ONGs, los grupos de base para pensar la campaña en la región de América Latina. El año pasado, este año 2021, la hicimos a nivel internacional. O sea, ampliamos un poco la actuación y juntamos historias de otras partes del mundo para impulsar y dar un poco más de fuerza en la campaña. Yo creo que uno de los principales temas, además de la audiencia que queremos, del público que queremos atingir con las campañas, es exactamente este fortalecimiento de capacidades de incidencia que todos los actores reúnen a partir de la participación y de la colaboración en la construcción de un movimiento colectivo, como es una campaña global, antes regional, como esta de Mujeres y Agua. Se toma tiempo para pensar cómo hacer todo, es un camino, ¿no? Mientras caminamos vamos aprendiendo mucho. Creo que la escucha es algo imprescindible para éxito en estas campañas. Es importante parar para escuchar los grupos que estamos trabajando, entender de dónde vienen los reclamos, las necesidades, las voluntades de las mujeres defensoras, y cómo traducir esto para carteles, posteos en redes sociales, pensar hashtags que pueden tener impacto en los espacios que elegimos para hacer las publicaciones. Eso es un presente que se lleva para todo el tiempo, ¿no? La Alianza GAGGA, de una manera general, arranca con esta idea de aprendizaje. El aprendizaje es una de las cosas más lindas que se puede tener en la vida, ¿no? Se aprende para siempre. Aprender a partir de la colaboración conjunta es algo realmente muy lindo. A veces estamos hablando con otro fondo ambiental, como nosotros de Fondo Casa, solo la simple acción de escuchar ya nos trae más ideas, ya nos trae más inspiración, ya ayuda a poner otras maneras de hacer lo mismo, ¿no? Eso creo que es una de las grandes fortunas que hay en una campaña como esta. Y también para las mujeres defensoras es increíble el efecto que tiene de ponerlas en destaque, a frente de sus luchas. Eso es algo muy, muy valioso, muy importante para la construcción y la transformación del planeta que queremos, ¿no? Queremos un planeta más justo, limpio, sano, seguro para todas las formas de vida. Y las mujeres tienen una fuerza muy grande para hacerlo. Hacen con el corazón, hacen con amor. Y eso es realmente lindo.
Gracias, Vanessa. Very clear. Maybe Banu, also from your experience, how do you feel that these cross-movement initiatives or campaigns at the regional or international level, what do they entail also beyond the campaign itself?
Directly, we have seen that women coming and telling their stories to each other, sharing stories within the platform itself has been very enriching and given a lot of solidarity and strength. And it has had a multiplier effect where the capacity building of women environmental human rights defenders, that has been a big focus of our network, has led to a stronger community level women's leadership building. So that we hope is going to build larger collective voices of women. The second thing what we are seeing is that it has brought together environmental movements and women's rights movements. Earlier, women's rights were, or women's agenda were taken for granted perhaps, and not so much in the conscious campaign strategies or the needs assessment or even the impact assessment. Now, perhaps also environmental justice movements were not very clear about how to go about addressing women's rights within the environmental justice movements. So our kind of work as a regional platform has brought a lot of visibility to women's issues and a lot of intersectionality and bringing together of environmental justice groups and groups working with a feminist perspective. So I think this has been, and also women's rights groups have largely not looked at natural resource rights or environmental violations within the feminist movement building as much as the need is there today, also because of the increasing risks that all our countries in the region are facing in terms of large scale, whether it's mining or other kind of industrialization and private projects or infrastructure projects or energy projects. So I think this does have a lot of effect on how movement building can happen in the region by bringing in the women's voices into the campaigns, and not only the campaigns, but at the policy levels, because we are reframing and redefining many of the gender policies, many of the terms that are used by the states, by the corporates, and by the financial institutions. For example, gender inclusiveness or gender equality as defined in our policies or as implemented in either environmental impact assessment reports or in the solutions that they give for the losses that women face. These are being redefined by us because women within the project planning or rehabilitation projects or compensation projects are more like a kind of a very subsidiary part of the main rehabilitation process. So I think the relevance that we bring at the region and at the global level beyond our immediate struggles and campaigns is to really demand for the core and critical issues that we are demanding, articulating at the ground level, but not reaching the policy makers. So I think that is also what beyond the campaigns that we are doing.
Thanks a lot, Banu. And in my experience of GAGGA, it's especially like the long-term investment in joining those two movements. And really, it's not like a project or doing it once, but it's a continuous learning over a period of time, a long period of time. So the final question, what I would like to ask Banu now to start, is if you can share any recommendations or lessons learned when thinking about cross-movement work, and especially because we would really like to learn from others also after sharing these recommendations and lessons, what their experience is with cross-movement work, and then especially between the women's rights movement, environmental movement, and climate change movement. But first, your recommendations and lessons learned, Banu. Thanks.
Yes, Tamara. Especially after COVID, we thought COVID would kind of bring some rational thinking and policy making or state decision making. But what we have seen after the COVID has erupted was that much more relaxations have been given to our constitutional safeguards, a lot more focus on doing ease of business, and a lot of biodiverse lands and forests have been opened up for plunder for the sector. So I think the first recommendation is that we strengthen our cross movements, and there is an urgency to strengthen this. When I say cross movements, it is across several, it is across women's groups and environmental groups. It is also across the interdisciplinary ways of connecting with each other, between academia, between alternate media, especially now with the mainstream media being so influenced by the powers controlled by the corporate sector. I think there is a lot more need, and I would really urge that we come together, engage with each other across campaigns, local campaigns and regional and global campaigns, and across sectors, because also what is happening in the mining sector has a spillover effect on what is how it is impacting either indigenous people or rural people in other sectors. Like there's infrastructure projects are happening in a very big way across the region, which means that building these kind of huge road projects means a lot more mining, a lot more energy intensive projects, and the international agreements that and commitments that our governments are committing to, in terms of saying that climate change mitigation will be a priority, and while doing business we will also take care of our environment. That is not happening. And in fact, the kind of solutions that our governments are offering for climate change mitigation or biodiversity protection, or to maintain their target of tree cover and forest cover, the kind of climate action programs that are happening, where compensation of forest loss for mining is tried through compensation of reforestation, which is only monoculture plantations. So communities are being displaced in multiple ways and in very hidden ways. So the solutions that are being offered are disconnected from the problems, and they are leading to bigger problems, bigger climate change problems. So within this interconnectedness, uh, it's very important that we look at what women are saying. You know, if we can start looking at the alternatives, if we can start looking at how we can connect across sectors and across different technical groups or academic groups or campaign activist groups, if we can start looking at what the women are saying on the ground, what women are saying are the impacts, and what the women are saying are the resilience strategies that the government should be adopting in order to combat these kind of viruses or to combat hunger or water problems. I think if we start from the women's perspectives and demands, the solutions will be much more clearer and also much more sustainable. So there is a need for all of us to relook at when we mean net zero or just transitions. What does it mean for women? What are women saying when they want just transitions? So these, I think, are very important and very urgent for us in this present situation of the way crisis is being escalated.
Thanks a lot, Banu. And I can speak from my experience that working with these powerful women over the past 5 years and before, it's really amazing. And it's so difficult to understand sometimes why they're not being heard and why they're not at the forefront, also on the policy level. Maybe Vanessa, also from your experience in Latin America, the recommendations and lessons learned from the We Women on Water campaign.
Bueno, yo creo que son muchas lecciones aprendidas en estos 5 años, pero una en especial se refiere a, para poner una campaña tan grande como esta, con la fuerza que se quiere, con tantos actores distintos, con sus diversidades, con sus realidades muy diferentes, es importante tener y apuntar una persona clave de coordinación, una persona que va a tener la responsabilidad de empujar todas las acciones necesarias para que se tenga en las fechas que se desea una campaña lista, linda, pronta, ¿no? No es algo de liderazgo de una persona que va a mandar, sino que una persona que va a tener en cuenta la marcación de reuniones, de charlas, apuntar las anotaciones, hacer la recopilación de las notas, traducir esto, comprender esto, despacito poner las acciones ordenadas para que se tenga la campaña funcionando como se quiere, en las fechas que se quiere. Cuanto más gente está involucrada en construir el movimiento colaborativo, más se ve necesario tener la figura de una persona. Esto lo hicimos de manera conjunta en estos 5 años. Cada año cambiaba la persona que estaba como coordinador de la campaña y fue excelente. Fue realmente una acción que tuvo su importancia clave para el éxito de la campaña. Otra cuestión que creo que es súper importante tener en cuenta y también que aprendemos haciendo esto son las cuestiones de seguridad. Estamos trayendo las historias de las vidas de las mujeres que están en territorio y sabemos que normalmente los defensores del medio ambiente son personas muy vulnerables, ¿no? Acá en Latinoamérica se matan la gente que hace frente a los desastres que se imponen en muchos territorios. Entonces hay que tener mucho cuidado con esta cuestión. Siempre tener en cuenta de consultar la gente si quiere poner su nombre, su cara en estos espacios. Eso siempre, no solo en campaña, pero en todos, creo, todas las acciones que vamos a tener en cuanto a una alianza global como GAGGA es importante tener en cuenta. Y también otra cosa que sale de una acción conjunta como esta construcción de una campaña regional y también ahora global para dar voz a un movimiento que tiene dos agendas muy fuertes juntas, es que las mejores soluciones, muchas veces las más fáciles y posibles de poner en marcha, viven y vienen del territorio. Las mujeres son las personas que están viviendo, comprenden de una manera muy distinta las situaciones y la realidad de los espacios donde los impactos son los peores. Eso, como estaba diciendo Banu, hay que escuchar a estas personas, hay que escuchar a las mujeres, comprender y hacer el tramo del territorio hasta donde está la decisión, donde se puede cambiar y hacer políticas públicas e incidir en todos los niveles, local, regional, nacional, internacional, para que el cambio que queremos pase, ¿no? Se construya de hecho. No es, el cambio que queremos es un cambio grande, no es algo que se hace así, entonces es una construcción. Creo que trabajos de movimiento y construcción de movimientos colaborativos como este de la campaña Mujeres de Agua y otras acciones también que GAGGA lleva adelante son importantes y muy efectivos para el cambio que queremos.
Thank you, Vanessa. I think the issue of security of the women human rights defenders is a very important one. So at one point, at the same time you want to be very visible, you also have to be very careful. It's nice to see that there are so many people. It's also a bit of a challenge because we wanted to open up for around 10 minutes for people to have explanatory questions to Banu and to Vanessa. Maybe something you would like to know a little bit more about, and I would like to ask people to post a question quite short so that we will have time for a few. And if you have a question, you can raise your hand by clicking on the reaction button at the bottom, and then raise your hand. And then, yeah, I'll randomly pick some people if that's okay. I see Ruchira. I don't know if I pronounced that rightly.
So thank you so much for your presentations. I'm based in Australia and I work across India and Australia on climate justice. And one of the challenges is being able to bring some of these narratives to the center of what is a just climate solution, like the interconnectivity between gender and justice and women's condition on the ground, and the dangers of various climate solutions that are pushed. Bhanumathi ji, you were talking about them, and those complexities are lost in a very simple global narrative, at least in the space of activism about coal versus renewables. What we need is to recreate narratives that get global attention, which put the most marginalized communities and women on the land at the center. So any kind of thoughts or suggestions that you have, or anything that you think people and groups who are based in the global north could actually do to help with that, would be great to hear from all of you. Thank you.
Who wants to go first? Banu or Vanessa? Banu.
Shall I go?
Yes.
Thank you. As a network, we have been campaigning and lobbying on a few critical areas. One is legally binding mechanisms. We are demanding that unless there is accountability of corporates and states and strengthening of laws, not weakening of laws like this, uh, uh, and the community's right to say no. Because most of the time the investors and the EIA processes are only giving opportunity for people to say whether they want compensation in cash or kind, or whether they want A kind of compensation or B kind of compensation, but not giving the right to say we don't want mining in the first place. So I think internationally, there is a need for putting stronger pressure on legal accountability. Although the UN Business and Human Rights Forum has been talking for donkey's years now about guiding principles and not getting anywhere close to legally binding accountability. So I think it's high time that we all talk some serious business in terms of so I think this is one area we would really like to focus.
Thanks, Banu. That's a very clear recommendation. Vanessa, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Después de esta respuesta, creo que no hay mucho más que añadir, pero creo que una estrategia buena también es siempre tener en cuenta las peculiaridades de los grupos que vamos a incidir, ¿no? Cuando hablamos de nivel global, se puede realmente perder un poco de los temas clave en las narrativas por cuestiones muy particulares de los espacios que estamos intentando incidir y hacer los cambios. Entonces creo que es importante tener esto en cuenta. También elegir una manera de hablar o de exponer las situaciones de una forma que sea un poco más general, pero sin perder las particularidades, haciendo los enlaces del local hasta el internacional en estos dos niveles. Es un reto, no es fácil, pero creo que es posible.
Thanks. I also see, I don't see any hands.
One more point,
There-
Tamara.
Sorry? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I see that there are two questions in the chat. One's quite long. Let's see. Well, at least I see one. It's someone who can talk. So my question to all the panelists, what can be the footprint you can advise to young female who are engaged in the climate change impact sector? What can we do to elevate the need, for example, for a gender focal point in all the countries, especially in the implementation of the Gender Action Plan? What I feel is that there's recognition of gender from the top leadership, but in the pipeline of the next generation, there's not enough recognition and capacity enhanced of gender representation. Our voices are not powerful enough on national level, which makes it hard to drive global action in gender and climate. I would like to ask one of you who has an idea about how to do that, to answer that. And then I propose we close the round of questions, as we have one more thing to do in 15 minutes. Banu, I see you want to.
I just want to make a quick response. One is that globally and at the national, if you're saying about the gender action plans and the inclusion of the voices of women, there is, say, a lot of groups are doing a lot of technical assessment in terms of assessing net zero or assessing, doing carbon tracking and assessing the national climate programs at a national level. If these can be aligned with the women's demands, if these assessments can be done from the women's rights, and the impacts on women. Like our network, we are doing gender impact assessment of mining projects. Can we really look at these, the targets that we have set from what the women's losses are and what the impacts are, and whether we are at all heading towards any kind of a reconstructive or resilient, national action plans. So the women's impacts and what women are saying in the communities who are directly impacted, that would be very important to take to the either national action plans and to the global lobbying and negotiation tables.
Thanks, Banu. I hope that responds to your question, Anissa. There's one more thing we would like to do, and that's to get an idea of your own experiences in cross-movement collaboration, if there is any, and otherwise maybe you can learn from others. And we want to do that by asking everyone. We have a mural. I don't know, you can see it now on the screen. If you go to the chat box, there's a link. Is there a link? There will be a link. And you can click on a link and then you enter what's shown now on the screen. And if you double click on one of those post-its, you can write something. And you can write it in whatever language you want. And we will figure it out which language it is and translate it for ourselves. And if you have difficulty to enter this because you're on your phone or anything, please feel free to put your experience and write something in the chat. There are people already, so it's working. And I propose we give you like 10 minutes to write here. And you can also read what other people wrote. And if there are any questions about the mural, just put it in the chat.
Me encanta ver la experiencia con este mural. Todos estos nombres caminando en los post-its es lindo.
A lot of animals.
Mientras esperamos, hay una pregunta de Leticia en el chat. Ejemplos de mitigación, acciones de mitigación de grupos organizados por mujeres. Yo me acuerdo de un grupo apoyado por GAGGA, que es de Bolivia, que quebra un poco de estos estereotipos, que busca en el activismo hacer acciones para traer más inspiración, información, quizás empezar un camino más directo de mujeres defensoras en una área urbana de una ciudad que creo que son dos ciudades de región de La Paz en Bolivia. Creo que es un camino súper largo, hay muchas cosas que construir. Paciencia, resiliencia, colaboración entre grupos, creo que son algunos ejemplos de acciones que se puede tener para impulsar e empujar estas acciones que son súper necesarias en los territorios. Cuando estamos hablando de justicia climática y de derechos de mujeres. Espero tener ayudado.
Thanks, Vanessa, for answering the question. And maybe what we can do is, if people look at what's written, is there anyone who sees like some overlap or something that comes back a lot? Looking at what other people wrote. So please feel free to just shout and say what you're what you're seeing. So if anyone. Maybe Banu or Vanessa, if you look at it, see any?
We can give some examples from the field on mitigative actions. One of the main mitigative actions that women are taking is that they're trying to stop expansion of new mining so that the impacts that they have faced are not going to spill over into other areas. Then some of our field partners have started working on their own livelihood restoration, so that women who have lost all kinds of livelihoods after the mines are closed, they're able to again have self-sustaining options. In India, we're also trying to demand for accountability in the use of the district mineral funds, because these funds are meant to rehabilitate the negative impacts on the environment and people's livelihoods. So women are demanding that not only mitigation but also corrective measures are taken with the use of these funds. And another thing is that especially indigenous communities are trying to take control over the conservation and biodiversity protection. So community conservation as the alternative to state controlled or private controlled kind of conservation is another strong strategy and demand that we are seeing from our partners.
Thanks, Banu, for sharing.
Yo me alegro de ver 2 veces esperanza escrito en nuestro mural. Sí, eso no se puede perder jamás. Y también un comentario sobre que toma tiempo y esfuerzo. Sí, así es. Toma mucho tiempo, hay que poner mucha energía. Si lo hacemos con esperanza y con amor, creo que es posible. También veo que la cuestión de hacer estas acciones de incidencia y cabildeo de forma colectiva, eso también es un plus. Ponemos más fuerza cuando lo hacemos de manera conjunta, ¿no? Con estrategias firmadas, con claridad en la manera que vamos a hacer, conocimiento, información, capacidades de incidir poder hablar con los grupos que queremos incidir de una manera eficiente. Eso es importante. Y creo que se construye esto con colaboración, con esfuerzo, con tiempo, con esperanza.
Totally agree, Vanessa. And what you also said is in one of your answers is that what you learn, you don't lose anymore. And all the contacts that you make, you don't lose that anymore. So it's an investment for forever. Banu, do you have any reflection on what's written in Euro? You would like to add? Or anyone else?
I agree with this issue of the patriarchal attitudes. What we have seen after COVID, the kind of welfare measures that are coming in the name of women, protecting women, because there's been a lot of talk about increase in domestic violence during the lockdown, during this pandemic restrictions. And what we are seeing is also that both IFIs and governments are putting in money in very superficial way in addressing violence against women by saying that we have provided some counseling and some psychosomatic redress programs. But what we are seeing is that structural violence, state and corporate induced violence, is really aggravating the domestic violence. And it's not just traditional societal prejudices, but it is the neo-capitalist structural violence, which is leading to much more patriarchal behavior, which is militarized, which is corporatized, which is state-sponsored. So I feel that there is a stronger need for all our cross-movement building in challenging these kind of very silly programs that are coming to the rescue of women.
Thanks, Banu. I think that's something to keep in mind for future actions, because we really hope that this session inspired others to really look at cross-movement collaboration and to also recognize that it's difficult and it takes time, but we really feel that by joining forces between the different movements will make us stronger and we can have more impact. I propose that there's 2 minutes left, so I propose people can continue to write on the mural, but I don't know if at one point, no, that's another. So I would like to thank everyone for participating in this session, and I hope it was interesting and inspiring. GAGGA will have another session on another topic, gender just community-based systems and practices for just recovery, tomorrow at the same time as this session. So feel welcome to that other session as well. And if you want to know more about GAGGA, on the slide you'll see the website and the Twitter of GAGGA. Thank you very much, Vanessa and Banu, for sharing your experiences. It was a great experience to listen to. And I would like to thank everybody for taking the time to listen.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.